The most intimidating pitchers ever. We talking about intimidation, folks. We talking about the kind of pitchers that make hitters weak in the knees before they even step into the batter's box. Those guys, man, those guys are different. They own the strike zone. They own the mental game. You think these hitters are scared of a little chin music? They terrified of these guys. We're talking about the best of the best, the most intimidating pitchers to ever toe the rubber. These guys didn't just strike people out, they made history. They etched their names in the record books and sent hitters back to the dugout with their heads hung low. This ain't some Mickey Mouse list, folks. This is the real deal. We're going deep, diving into the careers of 10 legends who defined intimidation on the mound. Get ready to learn, folks.
Nolan Ryan. The man was a walking strikeout machine. 100 miles per hour, easy. He threw heat. Pure heat. Hitters knew it was coming, and they were still scared. This guy, he wasn't afraid of anybody. He'd throw inside, he'd brush you back, he'd make you sweat every single pitch. You think you're gonna dig in on Nolan Ryan? Think again. He's got the records to prove it. 7 no-hitters, folks. 7. You think that's a coincidence? You think that's just luck? No way, no how. That's intimidation, pure and simple. Nolan Ryan, he didn't just pitch, he dominated. He owned the game. The Ryan Express, all aboard. Randy Johnson, the big unit, 6'10", throwing absolute gas. He looked like he could reach down and pick you up off the mound, just to stare you down. This guy was a freak of nature, left-handed, throwing from that angle, 100 miles per hour, with movement. It was just unfair. Hitters didn't stand a chance. And don't even get me started on that slider. It was absolutely filthy. It would start at your head and end up at your back foot. You just knew you were beat. Randy Johnson, he was in your head, man. He was a mental giant. He knew he was going to strike you out before you even stepped to the plate. And you know what? He usually did.
Bob Gibson. They didn't call him the Intimidator for nothing. This guy was the definition of mean on the mound. He owned the inside part of the plate. You even think about digging in, he'd knock you on your backside. And you know what? Nobody said a word. He had this stare, man, this death stare. It was like he was looking right through you. He wanted you to know that he was in control and you were just along for the ride. They say he'd even throw at his own grandmother if she dug in too far. That's Bob Gibson, folks, the Intimidator.
Pedro Martinez. He might have been small in stature, but he was a giant on the mound. He played with a chip on his shoulder, like he had something to prove every single time he took the mound. And that changeup, oh my goodness, that changeup. It was absolutely disgusting. He'd throw it in any count, any situation, and hitters would just look foolish. But it wasn't just the stuff, it was the attitude. He was a warrior out there, man. He pitched with an intensity that was unmatched. You could see it in his eyes, you could feel it in the air. Pedro Martinez, he was must-see TV every time he pitched.
Sandy Koufax. They called him the left arm of God, and for good reason. This guy was untouchable. He had everything you could want in a pitcher velocity, movement, control, and a curveball that would make you question your sanity. He threw 4 no-hitters, including a perfect game. A perfect game. You think that's easy? You think that happens by accident? No way, no how. Sandy Koufax, he was a once-in-a-generation talent. He was the total package, and he dominated his era.
Roger Clemens, the Rocket. This guy was a workhorse. He wanted the ball every 5th day, and he wanted to go 9 innings every time. He had a fastball that would blow you away, and a splitter that would make you look silly, and he wasn't afraid to use either one. He won 354 games in his career, folks. 354. You think that's easy? You think you can do that without being a little bit intimidating? No chance. Roger Clemens, he was the definition of a power pitcher. He was a force of nature on the mound, and he struck fear into the hearts of hitters everywhere. Don Drysdale, the Big D. He was as tough as they come. He didn't back down from anybody, and he wasn't afraid to throw inside. He once said, "I'll throw at my mother to win a game." That's the kind of competitor he was. He had a blazing fastball and a devastating curveball. But it was his demeanor on the mound that truly set him apart. He was a bulldog. Don Drysdale, he was one of the most feared pitchers of his era, and for good reason. Walter Johnson, the big train. They called him that because he threw so hard. We're talking about a time when they didn't even have radar guns, and this guy was throwing absolute gas. He's got the records to prove it. He's still the all-time leader in shutouts. Shutouts! You think that's easy? You think you can do that without being intimidating? Not a chance. He was a true legend of the game, and he paved the way for all the great power pitchers who came after him. Satchel Paige, the ageless wonder. This guy was pitching in the Negro Leagues when nobody wanted to give him a chance, and he was dominating. He was striking out guys left and right, throwing from all kinds of arm angles, and doing it with a smile on his face. He finally got his chance in the major leagues when he was in his 40s, and he proved he could still pitch with the best of them. Satchel Paige, he was a pioneer, and he proved that age ain't nothing but a number.
Goose Gossage, the Goose. He was the original closer. He'd come into the game in the 8th or 9th inning, and he'd shut the door. He had that Fu Manchu mustache, and he'd glare in at the hitters like he wanted to eat their children. He threw straight heat, and he wasn't afraid to brush you back if you got out of line. Goose Gossage, he was the definition of a lockdown closer, and he paved the way for all the great closers who came after him.
We just ran through 10 of the most intimidating pitchers in baseball history, folks. These guys were the best of the best, and they struck fear into the hearts of hitters everywhere. But now it's your turn. Who do you think was the most intimidating pitcher of all time? Was it Nolan Ryan with his blazing fastball, Randy Johnson with his devastating slider, or Bob Gibson with his killer instinct? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Grueling Truth for more great baseball content. Also check out thegruelingtruth.com for more great articles and daily betting tips.